Hey Emma,
Yes, Madelyn.
what do you think I'm going to call my new idea for a video game focused sauna where people play only PC games that they can purchase from like a certain big PC games platform?
I don't know. What are you going to call it?
I'm going to call it SteamWorld. Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your Swedish robot host, Madelyn.
I'm your King in Yellow host, Emma.
Do you think that, like, do you think that the author of that, do you think that Robert Chambers would, like, understand what has happened to his work?
What do you mean?
Like, I feel like so many things are influenced by The King in Yellow, and so many of them, like, so this week on the show, folks, just for
I've
reference
not
here,
read The King in Yellow either.
I
King in
have
Yellow,
read The King in
so-
Yellow. Unfortunately, that means I can no longer talk about anything but The King in Yellow.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're talking about SteamWorld, and we're talking about Saros, which is influenced by The King in Yellow. And I just don't know that this guy who wrote weird fiction in the 1880s, like, there's like a meme here of we're like showing him Saros, and he's like, "What's a television?"
Sure. Yeah.
We're showing him Emma's Mies up late discussing The King in Yellow.
That would be like that to him. That would be like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You've understood the point.
But he didn't even, like, he stopped writing. Even the King in Yellow short story collection kind of delves into a totally different genre by the end of it.
Yeah.
But he's sort of stopped writing stuff like that. So it would be, I'm sure, baffling to be like, hello, you've traveled 150 years into the future. Here is a bullet hell. They say this is inspired by your short story.
Here's the bullet hell. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
But first, we're talking about SteamWorld, which, as far as I know, takes nothing from The King in Yellow.
As far as you know, but ultimately isn't everything. Can't you trace everything back to The King in Yellow?
Sure. It's
In
like
the
the
end.
Bible.
Ultimately, the Bible can be traced back to The King in Yellow. Just kidding. So yes, SteamWorld. I don't know if you had a specific SteamWorld in mind.
I mean, the first one is SteamWorld Tower Defense, but I was just kind of thinking about the series in general because its defining trait as a series is that it's pretty diverse.
Yes, there are in fact 3 SteamWorlds that qualify for old game status, that qualify for Talk This. Should I change that to Talk This like Unk status game? Probably.
No.
Chopped games.
You're aging us, you know. You're setting us at a distinct moment in time so that when people in the future listen back on this, it doesn't feel timeless.
When they say, it's so crazy 150 years from now, everything traces back to Talk This. It's dangerous to podcast alone.
Yeah.
Anyway, there are 3 SteamWorlds that qualify for old game Talk This status, I think, which is SteamWorld Tower Defense, which came out for the DSi in 2010. Don't say DSi very often, do you?
No.
Then SteamWorld Dig, which came out for the 3DS and eventually everything in 2013. And then SteamWorld Heist, 2015-2016. And there have been another 3 or 4 since then, too.
Yes, a couple of sequels, direct sequels to previous ones, and then also SteamWorld Quest and SteamWorld Build. And apparently there's one that they're not currently working on, but would have
Bummed
been
about
called
this. This is the one that I want to play.
SteamWorld Headhunter. So
yes, as Emma said, what's fun and interesting about SteamWorld is, although it all exists in the same world, it's from, at least until the most recent ones, I mean, it's from the same development team, and now it's sort of from a successor team to a certain extent. To the
well, they were
developer
bought by Thunderful.
Right.
And sort of absorbed into Thunderful. So I believe there's continuing people working on it. They're just not Image and Form anymore.
I think it was more of a merger. Like, Thunderful has since bought a lot of things, but
Yes, and laid off a bunch of people.
Yes,
they bought
that's
too
why I
many
was like, I'm
things.
not sure if anyone is still actually from the original Swedish Image and Form team who did the first like 5 or 6 of these before being, or maybe 4 or 5 of these before the merger. But it's interesting in that, yes, it exists in the same world. It tells to a certain extent an ongoing story about these post-apocalyptic steampunk robots, but spans like every popular game genre, more or less.
Yeah, and that's probably what's most interesting about SteamWorld to me. Sort of like this indie team that has managed to make like a franchise IP, like a Final Fantasy, where you can put a bunch of genres under. You can put a bunch of genres under the name Final Fantasy and have a bunch of different gameplay systems, and people recognize it, right? Because it's called Final Fantasy. And so the idea was that like SteamWorld could be like, oh, it's a SteamWorld game. Who cares what genre it is? I love SteamWorld.
Yeah, and there's a nice little interview to this effect in PC Gamer with, this is a Swedish studio and the names are very Swedish, so I'm maybe not even going to be able to attempt this, but with, you know, one of the heads of the studio and the creators of SteamWorld, who was basically like, yeah, like I was with some buddies, I was having a beer, and we were talking about how, man, it's really hard when you release a game to explain what the game is and to get people to care enough to understand what the game is, and not just, you know, it's not as easy as with a book, maybe, right? Of saying, okay, you just have to understand the story, and are you interested in that? And it's not even as easy as with a movie or a television show where you say, okay, I have to understand the story, and maybe I have to understand something about the visual aesthetic of the director or something like that. No, you also have to get them to understand the gameplay, and like then everything else rolled into one, and that's really hard. And it's easier if you already have something like SteamWorld.
Yeah.
And he was apparently like quite inspired by the idea of ice cream brands, which I think is really fun and funny. Of, okay, you know, it's possible that you are a person who is going out and just buying chocolate ice cream, I guess, and that's your thing. But more common and more likely is that you really like Ben & Jerry's, or you really like Haagen-Dazs, or you really like insert name of my favorite trendy New York ice cream place here, right?
Mm.
And you're paying attention to what new thing you see on the supermarket shelves or what new thing they post on Instagram, and you might not have thought you were going out looking for fish food, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you see it and you go, well, I like Ben & Jerry's, so I'm going to try fish food even though I'm normally eating Chubby Hubby.
He also talked about in this interview, like, they used to make a lot of educational games.
Yeah.
And they felt like they got sort of like in a rut with that, of just making a bunch of sort of the same kind of educational game.
They were a studio for hire, basically, before becoming the SteamWorld machine.
So there's the balance of like wanting a recognizable brand that you can sell off of, but not wanting to get stuck in just like a different rut, making the same kinds of games over and over again. So you have SteamWorld, but you can make a bunch of different types of games within the SteamWorld world, so to speak, and creatively challenge yourself that way.
They also felt like having developed a niche in the educational games market was particularly difficult to parlay into. Like, they were like, you know, we were thinking about the from the creators of X marketing for ourselves, and we sort of felt like that was actually going to hurt us. Like,
but that might have been funny, to be honest, though.
Yeah.
Creators of like Math 2,
like
English
maybe
3.
You could maybe get away with that now in a funny way. And honestly, maybe in 2010, this sort of like digital games beginning, you might have been able to get away with being like, haha, like, I made Zoomy Math 3 or whatever it is. But yeah, a really interesting way of thinking about, like, it really seems like that idea of building an IP was really central from the beginning, which is so interesting for an indie studio, so interesting for as like the driving ethos, rather than I really want to make this specific game. It's I really want to create a sandbox for myself that I can use and also not feel like all my games are going to flop.
It does, I think, approaching it from that way does encourage you to, like, build out your setting more than necessarily you would have to if you're just like, well, I'm going to make this one game and then we'll see, right? You approach it of like, I'm going to make this one game and then we're going to use all this stuff again and we're going to make another game. You do have to think about, like, your story, I guess, and what's happening and what places in your fictional history you could set different types of games. So it's interesting to sort of have that. It feels like they have that, like, sort of like flexibility, right? Not to have to come up with entirely new ideas, but to be like, okay, they made all, in one of these games we introduced, they made all these, like, robot things at some point in the past, like these cool robot rocket things or whatever. So what if we made, like, a building game that was set while they were doing that, right? And so it's interesting to see, like, how they can, like, build off the lore they established to fill in other things in the game. Without getting, I don't know if there's any SteamWorld lore heads out there. There might be. Who knows?
I'm not sure that the lore is quite deep enough for there to be SteamWorld lore heads, but there's definitely an ongoing story that they continue to fill in. And I think that comes from, they set themselves up with an sort of initial premise that left a lot of room for, well, you could go in this direction, you could go in that direction, you could make a game about X, Y, Z, building on games that already exist to a certain extent. So the premise of SteamWorld, generally, if you are not familiar with the series, is there was a huge war between humans and robots, which the robots won. Don't think about that too much right now.
Did you see that video of the robot kicking the kid in the stomach?
I saw that yesterday, and there was speculation of whether it was real. Is it real?
I don't know.
Great. I hope it's real. I'm glad, if you saw it too, I'm like, okay, either it's a really widespread sort of hoax video.
I mean, it's not, it does not look like an AI generated video. I don't know if it was staged.
Yeah.
But, I mean, in that case, it's mostly like staff is clearly not paying attention enough to be like, your kid needs to stay behind this line.
Yeah.
Because the robot cannot respond and not kick your kid in the stomach.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just thinking about that.
And that will lead to the SteamWorld universe becoming very real in approximately 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, big war between humans and robots. Robots won. The humans now live underground. The bots have, like, created the American West, basically, above ground for robots, which that will be kind of fun if the robots do that in the real world, too.
It feels like that could be it. Yeah. American West, but, like, kind of, but, like, worse, with, like, Chud speak. That's kind of what the creators of AI kind of want, is my understanding. So,
do you think that in the American West there was an equivalent of Chud speak? Like, nothing like ours, but you have to feel like at any point in history there is always something that is.
Well, I mean, I assume like the younger generation always has had slang that the older generation, like, just doesn't comprehend, right?
Yeah,
that's of course always been true.
So anyway, even within the robots, they've recreated social stratification based on what their fuel is. And also there's always the threat of humans emerging and trying to steal your gold. So, like, that is pretty much the premise of SteamWorld Tower Defense, is you are robots and you have to defend your towers, quote unquote, from bands of humans who are trying to steal your stuff.
Yeah.
But just with that, which, like, Tower Defense, I think was, reviewed okay, was okay, and it was really with Dig that they started to see big success with the series. But you've already given yourself, just with that simple little bit of lore, so many different ways that you can go with creating new games. So, right, so, like, then there's the Dig ones, where it's like, okay, like, you're in the West. What do people do in the West? They mine for gold. What has been a staple of video games since Dig Dug? Digging.
Yeah.
Like, there's enemies you can shoot them, like in XCOM.
Yeah.
Let's make heist, right? They just set themselves up with a basic premise that very easily maps onto very familiar game genres, which is really smart.
I wonder if you could get away with this today.
Making games in a series like this that are totally different from each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting to think about even how the SteamWorld series has evolved. So the most recent one to come out is SteamWorld Heist 2, which came out in 2024. So SteamWorld Heist was like the third game in the series, and it was a turn-based tactics shooter. So sort of like XCOM-y, but instead of they really didn't like the sometimes I take a 99% shot in these games and it misses.
Yeah.
So basically a heist is just a response to that, wherein it's all aim-based, and you play as like kind of a pirate, and you're fighting back both sort of human-y things, but also like ancient robots. The pyramid building robots. I don't think they say that, but like that's the concept. And like that game ends with like big explosion, whatever. But like that game was sort of described as like, this feels like you're playing Firefly, which is such a 2017 way to 2015 way of talking about a game, but whatever. Yep. They were like, you're space pirates, and pretty contained space pirates, right? Not a gigantic game. Not like you're really just in space. As opposed to Heist 2, which, yes, most recent one in 2024, where it's more like huge Pirates of the Caribbean robot pirates. Like gigantic, like 40-hour game, huge thing, has a whole overworld portion that, like, I guess was something they wanted in the original and couldn't do. But, like, that game took 4 years to make. And it's interesting to consider, I think, on a number of levels. So one, just like the amount of time it takes to make a game, I feel like means that you just aren't able to churn out as many genres because time, right?
Yeah.
And two, and I think this is kind of interesting in the context, both of it being a European studio where maybe people have a little bit more job security, although I know this studio had layoffs, but bear with me. And two, also in the context of talking about Saros and its predecessor, Returnal, here. And also in thinking about Final Fantasy and, the perhaps relative job security of being a developer at Square Enix as opposed to being a developer at a random Western studio.
Yeah.
Obviously, or a random American studio, I guess is what I mean to say, is like people learn how to make types of games, right? Yeah. Like they have a skill in making that type of game. And given the greater and greater expectations we have of games, it feels harder to expect that a studio the size of, what is it now, Thunderpunk? It's not Thunderpunk, Thunderful. I think it feels harder to expect that a studio of that size.
Before layoffs, for what it's worth, Thunderful was a pretty solidly mid-sized studio. They have several hundred employees, but Image and Form was smaller at the start. Yeah.
Well, and I'm just imagining like it can't be the entire Thunderful staff working on.
Well, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So it just feels harder to expect a company or a development team of that size to be able to say like we're the SteamWorld team and we know how to make 4 types of games. Just because like how could that you'd be learning from scratch over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's certainly why on a very big, like AAA, that's certainly why certain things are similar to each other. And why, in some ways, why, like, mainline Final Fantasy entries, the regular numbered ones, seem to be taking so long to come out because they keep doing different combat systems for each one, right?
Yeah.
And different worlds too, different characters, different everything. Except for there's chocobos in it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting, different strategy for keeping the brand consistency of Final Fantasy, which is like, it's not so much it's in the same world, but like the Moogles are always there.
Yeah. Which is just interesting. But yeah, for like if you find success with your first indie game, that's a one type of way. It does feel like a risk to be like, okay, this is in the same world, but like now you're, it's Stardew Valley 2. Now it's a 3D action game, right?
Yeah. No, I think the understanding of game or company IP maybe has shifted from what they did capture in 2012 or whatever. Like we now, when Housemarque puts out a game, right? We expect like, oh yeah. I mean, and especially now that they've done 2 of these in a row, we expect it's going to be a sort of, Sony narrative poisoned. Just kidding. I mean that with no
no judgment in either direction.
Like bullet hell roguelike thing. Like that's what they do, and that's what you come to them to do. And so I think, or even if you think about like an A24 thing, like even that's like it's broader, but like, I'm not going to go see A24 presents Marvel the Avengers.
Yeah.
Like our expectations of brands, I think, have narrowed.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if Supergiant announces Hades 3, and then we'll know if we're cooked.
I don't think they'll announce Hades 3, but I wouldn't be so surprised to see them announce essentially Hades 3.
Yeah, we'll see.
Like, I don't think they're dumb enough. Maybe. I don't think they're dumb enough to do literal Hades 3. But
I mean, Hades 2 did well for them. So what's your definition of dumb, I guess?
Because I think that they will. My expectation would be that they make a game that uses those gameplay systems, but is not Hades.
Yeah.
Which I still think shows that we are cooked.
I was kind of tickled at the State of Play. I think the Dave the Diver people are making a prequel called Bancho the Chef. That's the chef character in that. That's like a sort of like a cooking mama thing, and I am quite tickled by that idea. That they're just gonna keep doing like this guy, the occupation games, and that's how they're gonna like connect them together.
That is fun. But that's an indie game.
Yeah, exactly though.
So they still have some of that flexibility.
Yeah. Anyway, maybe I'll check out some of those SteamWorld games.
I was sort of into it. I was, even though
it's the Heist. It's got one that's called Heist.
It doesn't really seem like it's a heist game.
Yeah, but still.
But I like an ongoing story. And I'm sure these would disappoint me in that regard. But as I was reading about, like, oh yeah, like, it's all sorts of different games. It's kind of an ongoing story. I was like, ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
And they seem fun.
Yeah.
I was bummed by the latest one is 40 hours. I was like, I don't think that's what I want. And I also saw some stuff online that was like, actually, isn't what everybody wants Dig 3? So they are still, to a certain extent, subverting expectations, for sure. But at least, I think it was either Polygon or Kotaku or something. One of them was like, or it was a preview. It was like, is this really what people want? Like, it's fun, but what about Dig? We actually like Dig.
Yeah. I mean, even when they released the first Heist after Dig, they were talking about, like, oh, we were very worried that people would just want Dig 2. But at the time they said that, no, Heist did better for them than Dig did, even. So,
It's the curse of success. If you make something people like, they're going to expect that you make it again.
I mean, we'll see if they make any more, or if SteamWorld has been killed by layoffs, but...
They don't really, I mean, in 2023 or whatever, they said they had 4 of them in development. I think 2 of them have come out. But, yeah, give me the co-op action-adventure one, cowards. It's not, if there was a time to... I feel like co-op action-adventure is kind of in.
Yeah. All right. Any last thoughts about SteamWorld?
Yeah, it kind of sold me. I was like, I'm not
I can play
uninterested
it on
in
my
playing
3DS.
this. Oh, right, of course.
So it's a pretty tempting offer.
Yeah. No, that's all I've got. We've talked about robots. Let's talk about aliens, sort of. Very space kind of themed week, and also very Scandinavian week.
Yeah, sure.
So Saros came out at the end of April this year, 2026, from Housemarque. It's their first game since being purchased by Sony. Oh,
Yeah.
right?
Yes?
I think so. Returnal was a PS5 exclusive, I believe. But
yes,
I
it was,
think
because
this
it
is
was
their
a launch
first
title, I think, for
Right.
the PS5.
But I believe this is their first game after literally being acquired by Sony. Which they talked a fair bit in the interviews around the game about how having access to all of those resources and this broader Sony developing community allowed them to broaden the game in ways that the reviews did not all feel like were successful, but certainly allowed for them to attempt to broaden some of the narrative scope of the game.
Yeah, they're always you roll the dice when you're purchased by like a Sony, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's helpful, and sometimes they say, "What if you made our 7th live service?" JK, we're backing off on that.
Yes, Housemarque seems to have gotten lucky so far in that despite the fact that... So, we talked about Returnal on the show.
Yeah.
I think it's crazy to me because I'm like, oh, I kind of remember talking about it here in this apartment, but it doesn't feel like I've lived in this apartment for 5 years. But I have. Anyway, we talked about Returnal when it was a new game on the show, and all of the discourse around the inability to pause or whatever, and
Save.
all of that. Save. Yeah, I know. I'm being dramatic. But Returnal was like a very solitary, like you are one scientist on an alien planet game doing repeated roguelike runs, getting deeper. And Saros is, and with bullets everywhere.
Yeah.
And Saros is sort of that game again, with some changes. So this time, instead of being a scientist, you are like a soldier protecting scientists. This time, there are other people there with you, so there are some other characters. That was a major thing that the developers talked in interviews of saying, you know, they describe themselves over and over and over again as a gameplay first studio. Very important brand. Despite the fact that...
I mean, they were making bullet hell type... They've been making bullet hell type things since they came into existence.
Yes,
so.
But it's really only since Returnal that they have taken that into... And, you know, I say this as, man, that, like, our memory of the industry is not that long, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, like, no, the Housemarque style is, like, sort of narrative-y roguelike bullet hells. Like, those are the kinds of games they make. Even though they have a 20 or 25 year history of making games that did not really have story before that.
Yeah.
But we have no institutional memory.
No. And to be fair, I wasn't super familiar with Housemarque until Returnal came out, because that's just not a genre of game that I am aware of.
Right.
So.
Exactly. But it's hard to tell if that pivot into more narrative is something like pushed by Sony or if it's something they want to do anyway. They certainly make it seem like they're excited about it.
I mean, they got iZombie guy.
Yeah.
That's what I know him from.
Yep.
He was in some other show that I think people actually know him from.
Right now. The Haunting of Bly Manor, I think. Yeah.
One of those haunting shows.
Yeah.
So they got a movie star in this one. I don't remember if Returnal's actress was anybody like famous.
I think she is someone who acts in not game things.
Yeah.
She's back in this one too. As part of the supporting cast, not playing the same character. I do think that that's nice when game studios have actors that they work with.
Yeah.
Particularly in, like, I don't feel like it always works in Like a Dragon that they are using they're using the same people, but it's different characters. But like,
let's
it's
not
in the
talk
same
about
world.
movie stars in Like a Dragon.
We're not going to talk about that right now. But it is cool when it's like more of a, you know, Emma Stone's in all of What's-His-Face's movies kind of situation.
Yeah.
As opposed to Emma Stone is playing the same person or a different person in the universe every time. Anyway, let me actually talk about the game before I talk about all the things about the game. So Saros, yes, you play as Arjun Devraj. You are an enforcer with the Soltari Corporation. Basically, we're in the future. It's a big future, like mineral-focused week. Future mining.
Sure. Yes, yeah.
So in the future, the Soltari heads Corporation, basically on a planet, the planet Carcosa, which will be familiar to you if you are familiar with The King in Yellow. It's inspired by The King in Yellow, as 50 to 60% of horror-y sci-fi is.
Sure.
So, there's this new mineral called leucinite that they've discovered there that is, very valuable. And so they sent 3 of what they call echelons, like groups of colonists, to go out there and mine. However, they've all gone missing. So we've got to send a 4th echelon out there to figure out what's going on. And so Arjun is part of that, but when sort of like at the start of the game, basically, he wakes up and he doesn't remember what's happened the past few days. He discovers that the ship has been sabotaged, that they're trapped there, and he's really there. They were sort of cagey about this in the pre-marketing, but I don't feel like it's a huge spoiler to say he is really there looking for his wife. Like, he's there on a job, but his wife was part of the 1st echelon, and she is missing.
I do think it takes a little bit for this to become clear to the player.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's like a huge spoiler either.
Yeah.
But essentially what you do is you have this base, you venture out from this base on different missions, depending on where you are in the story. There's sort of, I believe they're partially randomized, procedurally generated sort of environments.
Another thing it has in common with I try to call it Spore World with SteamWorld.
Not Spore World.
Yeah.
But there are enemies on the planet that attack you, can fire bullets at you, and you have various tools that you can use to fight back, defend against different types of hazards, so on and so forth. And eventually you'll reach various bosses that once you defeat, you gain access to more parts of the world. Saros also has you can unlock modifiers that allow you to sort of customize the gameplay experience as you want to make it sort of easier on yourself. And more of these unlock sort of the more that you die. So unlike Returnal, which was like super unforgiving, very difficult game that drove a lot of people away from it, Saros has more. It seems like there's some discourse about its difficulty in that if you were really big on Returnal, Saros feels pretty easy.
Yeah.
But if you start talking about Saros like you're easy, you get people who've never played these games before going into it, and they're like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
This is so hard.
Another thing that is different about Saros versus Returnal, I believe, to a greater extent, is as you were saying, there's modifiers, but there's a lot more in the like, well, you died, but like, you gathered some stuff, and you can use it. There's more of that Hades style, to throw it back. Sort of, you failed, but like you got something by failing.
Yes. And in Hades style, there's people there at your base now too. So theoretically, you can get some story type progression, even if you're dying. And in fact, there are some articles being like, you probably should die a few times.
Yeah.
Every time you get to like a new zone or whatever. Yeah. Just like let yourself die a little bit and then see what happens.
It does feel very much. It's funny to think of Returnal as like a PS5 launch title, and this is a PS5 5 years in title, because to a certain extent it does feel like a little more when you're like almost the only game on the platform that you can get away with being mean. The way that Returnal is, it's like, sucks to suck, buddy. Like, you bought a PS5 and this is the game you can play on it, so get good. As opposed to now where it's like, there's hundreds of roguelikes out here for this system. Like, we need you to like us.
What do you mean? There are no games on the PlayStation 5.
So right. My bad.
What are you talking about? This is still kind of the only game on the PlayStation 5.
I take back everything I just said.
They're stopping doing the PC ports. I'm not sure if that applies to Saros or not, but they've just walked that back at Sony. Yeah. So soon there'll be more games on the PS5.
Yeah, none on PC.
Yeah.
SteamWorld, my sauna is shutting down.
Saros also had a pretty strict embargo, apparently, for people writing reviews on it. One of those embargoes that makes it difficult, apparently, to talk about the parts of the game that are interesting. I think maybe even that, like, he's looking for his wife was actually, like, you're not supposed to say that, was part of the embargo. Which is, like, something that feels a little bit, like, okay.
Yeah, like... Again, I don't have a full sense of when you discover that in the game or if it's a big reveal, but it does sort of feel like first third of the game story spoilers should be a really challenging thing to embargo.
The thing, like, even if they don't directly tell you, like, the opening of the game is, like, he's woken up, you're being introduced to the various mechanics, right? And there's, like, a female voice telling him, like, find me, Arjun. Arjun, you're so close now. I'm here. And it's like, you can guess. You know. You can assume that that's what's happening from, like, the very start of the game. So it's sort of like, it's a little much. And there's also been some articles about being like, maybe they should not say anything about the game. Of, like, the Rahul, what's his name? Rahul... the actor.
Yeah, I know. I also remember his first name, but not his last name.
Kohli.
Yeah.
Like, doing interviews, talking about certain story elements, and just sort of sharing his experience on, like, okay, what direction did they give him, and, like, does that match, like, interpretations? Because this is a very, like, it's not a very directly told story in the same way that Returnal wasn't a very directly told story. There's a lot of room for sort of interpretations. And, like, he's come out and said, like, well, sure, but, like, I wasn't told, like, to convey that in my acting or whatever for, like, a certain very endgame thing that people have settled on sort of, like, a theory for, which does feel a bit like, not that he did anything wrong, and there's various various circumstances that might be why he felt he needed to say something about it too. But I feel like if you're committing to telling a story that's, like, very vague and sort of up to you to sort of piece it together, I do kind of feel like, should you as a creator ever really answer any questions about what you were thinking? I mean, unless, like, people are casting, like, terrible aspersions on your character because of certain story choices and you feel like you need to be like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Yeah. But yeah, it's an interesting question there, I think.
They did do some interviews. God, the bar for actors and how you treat them in the games industry is so low.
Yeah.
There was, like, at least one interview with one of the narrative leads where he was like, you know, like, I went out of my way to have a call with each actor to explain the game to them and, like, intro them and answer some questions. And also, we gave the script to them as early as we could. It's like, the bar is in hell.
I mean, that's a lot.
I know. I know it. I was like, wow. Like, they actually talked to them.
Yeah. I do wonder if, like, I mean, I assume they did some mocap for this. I wonder if you're doing the mocap acting, if you do get, like, stuff like your script a little bit earlier, or, like, descriptions of, like, the context of the scene that you're acting in more, like you would for a movie production.
Well,
versus like just putting you in the booth and being like, have fun.
but even in movie production, they don't always get that anymore, right?
Well, yes.
Tom
that's
Holland
for, like,
is not
dumb-
going to stand for it anymore. You seen that?
that good for him. Good for Zendaya's husband.
Yeah.
But
Good for Mr. Zendaya.
like it's so funny the context of like, yeah, he was on a Christopher Nolan set and was like, all right, we're doing this the Nolan way.
Yeah.
I get to read the script. The classic Nolan movie making technique. We
Yeah.
know what film we're making ahead of time.
Yeah, Chris is really innovating.
But I mean, there's always a balance of like, it's interesting to hear, you know, we read a lot of interviews with developers for games for this podcast, right?
Yep.
And talk about the things that they say about their games. But it is interesting to feel like the balance of like, a lot of times I read interviews and I'm like, shut up. Respectfully.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like, that's enough.
Excuse me, I think maybe I understand your game a little better personally myself.
Yeah. I want Christopher Nolan to make an Odyssey video game.
Sure.
Like a tie-in.
Yeah.
I feel like that could be... I feel like Tom Holland could do a good job with that.
It's got... You play as Matt Damon.
Yeah. It's actually a video game about the making of the movie.
Yeah. I'd play that.
Yeah. A couple of other, like, interesting tidbits from the various developer interviews that I read where I did not quite go, like, oh, shut up. Was interesting to see... So there are a couple of interviews with Simone Silvestri, who's, like, the sort of, you know, visual lead, basically. Art lead. And one where she really hits home on the... Which, I'm like, I don't know... I'd be interested to hear your take on this. There's one interview she did where she said, you know, I really don't feel like what we're aiming for here is visual fidelity. Like, we're not in this, like, realism arms race at Housemarque. You know, we're focused on how are we doing the visual storytelling of the bullets. We're focused on how are we creating immersion through, like, believable sensations or whatever, but we're not so focused on realism. And on one hand, like, okay. On the other hand, it still looks like it does.
I mean, I agree that the, like, story cutscenes of Saros are not pushing visual boundaries.
Yes.
And I don't think they're really attempting to, but they are doing, like, face model stuff.
Yeah.
So it has to look somewhat like him or else it becomes a little freaky, right?
Yeah.
So there's a certain bar that they have to hit, sort of, generally. But no, I'm not looking at Saros and being like, wow, the pores on his face, in the way I might in some other games that they're pushing stuff. And obviously the visual design of, like, the bullets and the clarity of combat is probably the main focus there. Saros also has, I don't think Returnal had this at launch, or at least they've made the options more robust in Saros. But because all the bullets are color-coded to communicate information, you can pretty robustly customize the color of the bullets in this one, just in case you have some various kind of color blindness that would make this game impossible to play.
Yeah, always interesting, the ability to use color as a development gameplay shorthand.
Yeah, I do think if you are fully, like... I can't remember what the actual name for it but if you can't see color, period, this might still be a difficult game to play. But they do provide a lot of different color options. Or you could make all bullets the same color if you hate yourself for some reason.
Yeah.
I guess. So.
I also found it interesting, there was an interview in Games Radar specifically about architecture. Which anytime I encounter something, like, funky in games where it's like, oh, you had to do actual research and you thought about actual things as opposed to that looks cool.
Yeah.
I think it's a weird moment of like, oh, somebody read a book to do this, probably.
Wow, Madelyn.
I don't know. I don't always think about art design for games that way, which is dumb AF. I recognize that. But when I was hearing, like this like design head saying, well, first we were thinking neoclassical because like worship and that was kind of the idea and like the scale. But then like neoclassicism is like kind of too soft. So they say, we fused Italian futurism with the works of Sant'Elia and painters like Deperot, combined with the megastructures of Boulez, and made our own architecture style. And not that anyone at SteamWorld is doing that, right? But it's an interesting challenge to think about creating that post-apocalyptic or new future design world.
Or alien design, right?
Yeah. And what are you drawing from? And cool that that's not just, as I would do it, draw me cool building.
I'm sure that was the direction that they received, right?
Yeah.
That's what the director says.
Yeah.
To the art team.
Yeah.
Hello. We need some cool buildings, please.
On the other hand,
and then they figure it out amongst themselves.
Yeah. On the other hand, there are hands everywhere in the design, which apparently was not on purpose.
They just...
I mean, the interview then goes on to be like, well, like, we kind of stumbled upon it. But it wasn't anyone who was going like, there's going to be hands everywhere. Yeah. It seemed like it got reverse engineered to, hands, because greed. But that wasn't, like, it's funny the kinds of things that are, we researched Italian futurism, and so the frieze looks like this as a direct reference to this cultural moment, as opposed to, we drew a lot of hands.
I mean, that's why doing your own concept art is important.
Yeah.
I hate developers out there that would say like, oh yeah, we're going to use AI for our concept art. Obviously.
Especially for your hands.
Especially for our hands.
Concept art.
But like you will find things like that. You start doing a lot of concept art, be like, man, I'm drawing a lot of hands. That's kind of sick.
Yeah.
Right? What if we, like sort of incorporated that purposefully throughout the rest of our design? And so that work that goes into ideation is important to create something that's actually distinctive and perhaps unique.
And there was also the perennial question of building a game that is hard and wants you to know it's hard and wants to be hard to, a little rough and not scaring players away, is the soundtrack. It's by a Grammy Award-winning composer. And he talked about how, the goal was to take electronic music and combine it with drone metal, which is not very melodic or friendly if you're not immersed in that. And he was like, well, like, game developers are all metalheads, so like we like knew what that was. So on one hand, I had to be careful that I was creating this and I wasn't making something that was like fake heavy. And he said, eventually he sent something in that he thought was gonna be like way too much and got holy moly back, and which I think is a crazy way to respond to like, I sent you heavy metal for the soundtrack, and the 2-word response is holy moly.
Gee willikers.
Yeah, I know. But he talked about, he was like, okay, so like I'm trying to create this oppressive atmosphere, but I don't want the player to be so turned off by the music that they don't want to play.
Yeah.
So the constant challenge of these sort of hard games in many ways, of walking that line between this is sort of oppressive and also my ears aren't bleeding.
Yeah. All right. Anything last? Just any last things to say about Saros? Do you think they'll make another one of these next?
I think they have to now.
What color will it be?
What color will it be?
Well, Returnal's kind of blue, and this is very yellow.
Sure.
So purple. Yeah.
No, I don't know. It depends on what they're gonna. Returnal was like Lovecraft, right? And
neon
this one is
pink.
Sure.
I'm locking it in.
Sounds good. Final answer.
About the horrors of like femininity.
That would be cool, but they already did a game that was about a woman, so.
You're right. There's only one woman perspective to explore. It's tough.
Mom game, right? That game?
Yes.
This game, husband game.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no child in this, so far as I know.
Yeah. Okay. I actually think these are going to be a little harder to mash up than I would like for them to be.
So there's nothing we can really do for the SteamWorld from a gameplay perspective necessarily, but we could say that it doesn't have to be either of these gameplay in the SteamWorld tradition.
That's true. That is true. I think the thing they share, we've got this kind of like resource gathering future kind of semi-corporate situation. So like that's definitely, it's got to be space set. Most of the SteamWorld games do have like kind of a run type structure. So I do think we've got to, I recognize it doesn't have to be gameplay wise the same as either of these, but I do think a sort of run based structure is probably the framing. And like, don't know if you know this, that's kind of hot in games right now. So
pretty hot, yeah.
Like could be a good idea anyway.
King in Yellow, do you think any of the King in Yellow stories would lend themselves to a run-based structure?
Let me remind myself. Story summaries. Okay. I mean, it can't be about the book. Like the one who reads it descends into madness. We can't do that. What other?
Well, you know, there are run-based ones where, like, you pick, like, a character, and then your character dies, and then, like Darkest Dungeon is like that.
Maybe,
where you have, like, a different character every run you do.
That's an interesting idea, but... Oh, right. There's the one... Okay, I'm remembering some of this now. So, yes. So, The King in Yellow is actually... There's the title short stories. The King in Yellow is a play in the
yes.
book. Yeah. Okay, so then there's The Mask, which is about... There's the narrator, who's a painter. He's in love with a young woman, but she has a partner who's a sculptor. This is something... The Boris, the partner... has just created a mysterious liquid that turns items plunged into it into marble representations of themselves. So, like, there's, like, a resource thing here, like a magic liquid. In the end, Genevieve gets, like, plunged into that. But I think the painter manages to revive her, and in the end, happily ever after. Kind of weird, if I'm remembering that correctly. That might not be quite right. But maybe there's something to that. Maybe there's something to a magic liquid.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of... I remember talking about this when I read it at the time. A lot of the King in Yellow stories are like, there's a sort of like ennui-stricken young artist man, and he has a beautiful woman who eventually falls in love with him. Okay. And it's like, all right, Robert, like, we get it. That is
very... I see the twist and the Saros twist on that. I see it.
Yeah. Yeah, I have little to offer you that's helpful. Okay. Most of them are sort of in Paris, too.
All right, it's in Paris.
Cool. No, it has to be in space. It has to be in space Paris.
It's in
no, we
space
can't do
Paris.
That people are already doing steampunk Paris. We can't do it.
You never watched Gankutsuo, right?
No.
No. The space Count of Monte Cristo.
No, I should though.
That's reminding me of that. Space Paris specifically.
Okay, I could do... Here's a thought. I'm taking the idea of like, okay, there's this liquid that eventually transforms you into something else. So maybe we're in space underwater.
Okay.
Like some kind of space planet that we've discovered that has water in it. And not only does it have water, but it's not water. Like it has liquid.
Okay.
And under that liquid, there is some kind of resource that we want. Or that the corporation wants. But exposure to that water... And you could either do the run based around this, right? Like eventually you, quote unquote, turn to marble, whatever we decide the equivalent of that is. And you have to be hauled up and fixed. Or it might gradually change you over time, thus changing your gameplay, whatever.
Subnautica 2 has these, like, you're swimming around underwater. I think it might be space water in Subnautica 2. I don't remember what it is in the original Subnautica. But you find, like, adaptations that you can, like, incorporate into your body that give you, like, more ability to do different things in different parts of the water. That's what this is sort of reminding me of.
Okay, so this game already exists, is what you're telling me.
Kind of.
Maybe it's a reverse bullet hell.
A bullet heaven, you mean? Per Steam?
Does that mean you have to hit all the bullets? Is that what a bullet heaven is?
No, bullet heaven is like Vampire Survivors.
Right, yeah. No, I'm saying you have to try to get hit by as many of the bullets as possible.
I see.
It's like it gives you the resources to keep going.
Okay.
I feel like there's something to that. And if you don't do that, you turn to marble or whatever.
If we're bringing the robots into it, we could go very Ship of Theseus with it.
Honestly, doing a, like, it's inspired by the Ship of Theseus would not be out of the question here.
Yeah.
I don't mind that. I don't feel like we've gotten to a coherent game. My Bullet Heaven Ship of Theseus inspired game.
It's okay. I think that, it's got something to work with. We'll give it to the art team, see what they come up with.
Draw me something cool.
Yeah.
Well, listeners, thanks for tuning in for another episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
If you were making a SteamWorld game, what genre would you want them to explore? Farming sim. If you were Housemarque, do you think there is any possibility of making a game that is not just like this? Again, I think no. I don't think, unless Sony goes, okay, sorry, you're making The Last of Us now. I don't think that there's any way.
What if they made The Last of Us 3, but it is just like a Returnal like?
People would hate that, but it's an interesting idea. I don't know how you would justify coming back to life over and over. Actually, no, I take that back. It was like you're just constantly pulling Ellie's blood and injecting it into a person to cure them so they can keep going back out. It's not a terrible idea. Anyway, if you, whatever, I'm not even going to ask any questions. If you have any other thoughts on things we talked about this week, hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Blue Sky at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can check out more about the show, the games in the hat, and read our blog. But most importantly, if you enjoy the show, you ought to subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts Online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Cast, wherever you can find podcasts. Subscribe to Talk This so you never miss an episode. It's Emma's side quest next week, but what will we be talking about in 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks, for our old game, we'll be talking about Pandora's Tower.
Cool.
And for our new game, we'll be talking about Unfair Flips.
So look forward to that. That's all we've got this time, folks. Thanks for listening. Emma, sign us off.
This week, I hope the robots in your life don't read The King in Yellow. Or maybe do.